Good morning. This is the regularly scheduled meeting, Board of Fire Commissioners. Date is December 5th, and it's 9 a.m.
Let the record reflect Commissioners Ibarra, Hara, Ninberg, Woods Gray are present, and we have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you. Flag salute and moment of silence.
Everyone please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing and join me in a moment of silence to remember and honor all public safety professionals and military personnel who have dedicated and lost their lives protecting our safety. Thank you.
So we start, as always, with Commissioner comments.
Good morning. First, I have to say that I'm devastated over all the fires that are taking place in LA County and Ventura County today. I just can't believe that we're going through this again, and praying for all of our firefighters for the safety and for the citizens also. I did have the pleasure of attending Dorsey High School's award program for their magnet schools, and it was a pleasure to see the fire service cadet program introduced to the school. They have 25 young people who are involved in that school. They're ninth graders, and so it's a great place to start with ninth graders because they'll be there for 4 years, and we'll have plenty of time to work with them, and hopefully we can get convince some of them to follow through and stay with the fire department. They all seemed very eager. They were ready. They looked really great. They had their shirts on, and they had, the slacks and everything. They were dressed in a little uniform. So they looked very presentable, and it was a pleasure to be there and be welcomed by the school. So I look forward to great things from that program, as well as all of the other cadet and magnet programs.
I had the pleasure of riding on the bandwagon for the fire department at the Hollywood Christmas Parade, and along with my granddaughter and my son, and Independent Assessor Stengel and her family, and Cody Wyreader and his family. So we filled the bandwagon, even though we did miss Jimmy Woods Gray. But it was a great event, and likewise, I want to echo, the concern and that I have about all the wildfires that are burning as we speak.
Yes, that's all actually I want to focus on as well, is just extend my thoughts and prayers to everyone who's out there, and really grateful that we have one of the best trained fire departments in the world. And so I know sometimes, obviously, there's only so much you can control, but I'm grateful that they're there. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the fire chief from Chief Rideout.
The following events were attended by Fire Chief Ralph M. Terrazas from November 7th through December the 4th. On November 7th, the chief attended the reception for Ms. Karen Wagner at the Doubletree Hotel. On November 8th, he attended the chief officer's retirement dinner honoring Chiefs Vidovich, Raynar, Welch, and Nida. On November 12th, he attended the 16th annual tree lighting ceremony at the Grove. On November 14th, he attended the USC Summit on Global Solution in the Age of Homegrown Violent Extremism. On November 16th, he attended the Latino Leaders Luncheon at the California Club. On November 20th, he interviewed with ABC relative to fire prevention safety. On November 28th, he attended lunch with Operations Valley Bureau at Fire Station 89. On December 1st, he interviewed with the Toys for Needy Children program, Stuff a Bus, out at the Westfield Topanga Mall. On December 2nd, the Sertoma Golf Tournament at the El Carrizo Golf Course. On December 3rd, he attended the 37th Annual Spirit of San Pedro Holiday Parade. And on December 4th, he had a video shoot with Inside LAFD here at headquarters. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief.
Busy.
We don't have any presentations today, and we don't have any river reports, right, from any of the bureaus. So then we can move with the consent agenda. Dr. Eckstein. Sorry.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we have river report by the medical director. Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Significant EMS incidents since our last meeting. We had two really nice cardiac arrest saves in the last week or so, one of our own captains from planning was on scene. Engine of Rescue 34 on November 25th responded to reported cardiac arrest of a very young woman, 35 years old. Call was dispatched in about 40 seconds. The dispatcher, using TDS, correctly identified the patient was unresponsive and had no effective pulse, and provided dispatcher-assisted CPR instructions. And the engine of Rescue 34 were able to achieve return to spontaneous circulation, and the patient began breathing on her own prior to arrival at the hospital. On November 29th, as you know, we have a EMS pilot program at LAX. That's approximately 2 months since implementation. We actually had our MedCart, which is our Advanced Provider Response Unit at the airport, along with our one of our new cycle teams, actually get flagged down in the Bradley terminal for a 68-year-old gentleman that had collapsed. So they created a still alarm. They determined this patient was in cardiac arrest. The cycle team and the MedCart initiated both basic and advanced life support. Then additional resources, Engine 51 and Rescue 5 responded. They also were able to achieve return to spontaneous circulation. And this gentleman was actually awakening, regaining consciousness, breathing on his own upon arrival at UCLA. So it was an outstanding save with our new resources at LAX. Also of note, since our last meeting, as you know, we implemented our first ever LAFD SOBER unit. SOBER is an acronym. It stands for Sobriety Emergency Response Unit. As you know, given the expanding homeless population and the prevalence of alcohol and other substance abuse, particularly amongst this vulnerable population, we implemented a public-private partnership between the LAFD and Exodus Recovery, which is a 501c3 that works under the auspices of DHS. So the Exodus Recovery operates a sobering center on Skid Row. They provide the nurse practitioner and case manager, and we provide a firefighter paramedic. The sober unit, which is designated SR4 and is stationed out of Fire Station 4, went into service on November 14th. On its first 10 shifts, they've transported 35 patients with acute alcohol intoxication to the new sobering center, which is a paradigm shift. Historically, these patients would be transported by paramedic ambulance to an emergency department, where they typically would sober up and go back on the street, and notorious recidivism without any definitive care for their underlying problems. Once the patients achieve sobriety at the sobering center, they're offered a variety of social services in terms of detoxification and transitional housing. So we're very, very excited about this resource. This is the first resource of its kind, to my knowledge, in the country with this staffing configuration. Mm-hmm. There are sobering resources in Denver and San Francisco, but I don't believe any others have an advanced provider. In this case, we have a nurse practitioner, which affords these patients an additional level of patient safety, because these are high-risk patients, and they need to make sure there's no acute medical issues that would warrant transport to the emergency department. So we're very, very excited about the implementation of this new resource. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Great.
Can I just ask, I don't know if you have the answers to these questions, but I just wanted to mention it. I noticed that we have an ambulance at the auto auto show. Are you familiar with that? If not, just go to some.
I know there's an auto show going on now. I'm not aware of that. We have any resources stationed there. The auto show is in Fire Station 10's district.
I actually think it's on display, so I was just trying to find out what's significant about that particular ambulance. That's okay. I'll talk to somebody else about the don't.
Chief Terrazas posted a picture of one of our ambulances being on exhibit in that auto show. Yeah.
Not aware of that.
Okay.
We'll have to ask Shiraz.
Oh, okay. I'll ask Chief DeRozas about that. It must be
I'm not
something
aware of any
special about it.
resources being staged for that.
It's
that.
not actually stationed. It's not working. It's just a part of the exhibit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So, anyway, so I was just curious what was very different about it. My other question relates to cannabis. Will there be training for our firefighters and paramedics to be aware of the difference between the different kinds of intoxications? Are they already trained for that? Because I know it's been going on already, even though it won't be legal until January 1st. But I'm concerned now because January 1st, I feel like we're going to have an influx.
Can people overdose on marijuana? I mean,
Yes. So we, speak to put my emergency physician hat on, we've seen a huge spike in patients coming to the emergency departments who are acutely altered from acute intoxication with marijuana or some form of cannabis, particularly with the advent of edibles. We're seeing these in children. We're seeing these amongst in the elderly, who obviously are impacted much more significantly than otherwise younger or healthy people. Our members are experiencing dealing with overdoses. The challenge with new cannabis regulations is thus far nobody knows what the concentration of the active ingredient, which is THC, is in any form. So that's the real challenge. Whether it's an edible or something they smoke or ingest in any other format or vehicle, they don't know the concentration of THC. So everybody's going to react differently. The patients are treated symptomatically. If they're altered, there may be medical issues going on. There may be other illicit substances or prescription medications. So these are all treated the same, but I agree with you. I do expect to see a spike. They did see a spike in Colorado when it was legalized there. I think from a societal impact, probably the greatest danger is going to be increase in traffic accidents due to DUI, which they also saw in Colorado. But in terms of our EMS response, nothing has changed. We have a specific dispatch algorithm where it's known or suspected ingestion from marijuana or synthetic marijuana. Other than that, patients are treated symptomatically.
Okay.
but the sobriety unit is only for alcohol intoxication or also for drugs?
So the sobriety unit is intended for known or suspected alcohol inebriation. Some of these patients might be under the influence of other substances, but it's primarily for alcohol. In terms of additional level of safety, the sobering center has 24/7 staffing with at least an RN or a nurse practitioner. So the patients are closely monitored by a medical provider at the center. But again, it's known or suspected alcohol intoxication with particular focus to make sure there's no evidence or suspicion of any known or occult head injury.
Great. So, and we'll bring you back to do another presentation so that you're actually on the agenda on that.
Very well.
Because I'm sure that all the commissioners have questions about it. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
So we have no presentations. So consent agenda items. Can somebody move it?
I move consent agenda items A, B, C.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moving to the first regular agenda item, it's report by the department on the Firestat section status report.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Drew Steinberg, the Fire Statistical Manager assigned to the Firestat section. So in 2017, the department implemented tiered Firestat as a means to promote communication through the ranks with the goal of expanding the department's engagement and performance management and the data-driven culture from members in the field to the administration. The 2017 Firestat inspection meetings occurred for the 3 quarters for the geographic bureaus on all 3 platoons. Additionally, inspection meetings occurred for the various bureaus, divisions, and sections within administrative operations. With Firestat inspection meetings, the department has seen improvements in turnout time by an average of 7 seconds citywide and on the station-wide level. Improvements have also been seen in the ability for sections, bureaus, and divisions to track and meet benchmarks throughout the department. In addition to performance management, the Firestat section acts as the data stewards for the department. Attached to your report are graphs to help visualize the department's response time data in terms of averages for call processing time, turnout time, travel time, and operational response time. The graphs show the monthly averages for 2017 compared to 2016. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thanks so much, Drew. So it's great. The call processing time and turnout time decreasing is fantastic. I mean, especially as you see the call volume going up. So it's counterintuitive to see that that's actually going down. And it's slight, but on every other subsequent graph, the operational response times are going up slightly. What does that due to? Do you know?
Not 100% conclusive. However, as you notice, that travel time has also increased as well. And so there's a multivariable approach that affects travel time. And so since operational response time is comprised of call processing time, turnout time, and travel time, the increases in travel time are most likely what are impacting the increases in operational response time across those 4 categories.
So it's
Traffic, weather conditions, construction across the city, anything in those regards, yes.
And is it possible to separate, is it even possible to separate all that out?
We're looking at different tools that can help us. However, at this time, we don't have the tools available to us.
Okay.
So, and what makes it tiered?
The tiered Firestat process is there are 4 tiers. So we have the first one is when the fire chief meets with his chief deputies and he shares his goals. And then vice versa, they share their goals that they've received from their commands. And then from the chief deputies meeting with their deputy chiefs, we consider that to be tier 2. Tier 3 meetings are when the deputy chiefs then meet with the battalion chiefs, and then tier 4 is the battalion chiefs meeting with their captains. And so it's those types of meetings occur both on the administrative operations and the emergency operations side.
And how did that result in the improvement in response time?
Having the communication go both from top down and bottom up has been very effective in terms of having the ability for improvements to be seen across the department in means of response times for the geographical bureaus, and then in means of tracking metrics and being able to ensure that goals are being met on the administrative operations side.
Excellent.
Anything else?
No, and you engaged in every level.
Correct.
All great.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move to file and receive BFC 17-126.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5B is report by the department on the fire prevention inspection activity for 3rd calendar year of 2017.
Good morning, Madam President, Commissioners, Chief Rideout, Council, and Acela. My name is Kristen Crowley, and I'm the Deputy Chief of our Fire Prevention and Public Safety Bureau. I'm here to report on the Fire Prevention's 3rd quarter inspection activity. What we've done is pass along our report. It's a 20-page report that really gets into the details of our performance-based metrics within the Fire Prevention Bureau, specifically focusing on 3 of our 4 sections. So that's our public safety section, our industrial commercial section, as well as our fire development section. Our CUPA section, which is our Certified Unified Program Agency, will be next commission will be reporting on their quarterly statistics. So the report in front of you is very specific to those 3 sections of the 4 that we have within the Bureau. What I wanted to touch on specifically for our overall performance was on page 2. It's got a nice broad overview of our overall performance of the 3rd quarter. Of course, we shoot for our 25% completion per the 4 quarters of the calendar year. We've tasked our staff, our section commanders, unit commanders, with actually exceeding that 25% to allow everyone to also conduct their collateral duties, which are many layers of what we have to accomplish within the Bureau. So this just only touches on the inspection side, the re-inspection side. We've also focused a clear pathway for all of our members to ensure that we have timely and very high quality inspections done within a certain time period. So within the report in front of you, it specifically speaks on each of the sections and units. But just looking at the broad overview, for the 3rd quarter, we did complete our 25% goal, 25.07%. Overall, for the 3 first quarters of the calendar year, we're at 72.1%. And we're real confident in regards to the fourth quarter, which we've almost completed. As of another 2.5 weeks or so, we'll be complete with our fourth quarter. Like we set out from the very beginning, from the command staff side, made it very clear our overall goal is, again, to achieve 100% inspection rates, but also refocusing and reprioritizing the reinspection side. Without the reinspections, our inspectors go out and identify hazards within these buildings. If we don't go back and do the reinspection, we're not certain whether or not those hazards have been mitigated. So in the report, it also touches very specifically on our reinspection rate, which we've increased over the third quarter. Just to give you an example, on the third quarter, actually the first, second, and third quarter, we completed 5,596 reinspections. Within just the third quarter itself, we completed 2,330, which is overall 42% of all of those reinspections. So as we push that information and share that information of our priorities within the reinspections, that's trickling down, and our inspectors are 100% in regard to the importance of doing that. Wanted to touch on briefly also just one of our greatest challenges, and I think this is really persistent and consistent across the issues that we have within the Bureau, are staffing. So right now we only have 3 vacancies within our Fire Inspector 1 positions. So those should be filled as of January. But the constant issue that we have is when our members are off long-term injury or illness. Those are vacant districts. Those are vacant in which we don't have the luxury like the field has to pull anywhere from the field and backfill. So we're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish. Even at the 25% mark for the third quarter, we had approximately 12% of our personnel off duty for the third quarter, yet we still were able to obtain that 25% mark. So we really wanted to throw out the accolades for our staffing, our command staff, section unit commanders, inspectors, and our civilian staff who've really pulling together and coming together as a team to ensure that we accomplish our mission. As for the specifics, if you have any specific questions about any of the information, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for this report. And you answered a lot of my questions as you were speaking. You touched on staffing. Obviously, you looked through this whole thing, but it looks like churches and institutions is obviously impacted the most, as well as high-rise unit. What are the solutions? Because not doing these inspections and not doing the re-inspections doesn't seem like that should be an option.
Right. The solutions, the staffing's the staffing. So we know how many inspectors we have to actually go out and conduct. We know and we foresee and we keep track of all the members who are off long-term IOD and IOD, which is injury on duty or non-injury on duty. So those are just our members who aren't at work conducting those inspections. We can't control that. What we can control is the pace and the quality at which we conduct our inspections. If we have members who are performing at a really high level, for instance, fourth quarter, we've got members, if you look at the stats within high rise, they're way ahead in regard to their 25% mark. They're going to reach their 100% mark. So if we can get ahead of ourselves and do beyond the 25%, we then have the ability to shift our staffing around, and then those members will assist in those vacant districts. Our unit commanders are deep into our fire prevention application. That's our software that we use to ensure that the unit commanders are looking at the performance on a daily and weekly and monthly basis and communicating with the section commanders. So we have the ability to shuffle our staffing around. We're looking at other innovative ways to stay ahead, whether or not we can utilize and train firefighters or whomever from the field as a cadre concept. But we stay ahead the best that we can in regard to conducting so we don't fall behind. We use the metrics as well in here. If you look at the early warning overdue, we're at 8 to 9% within our industrial commercial and our public safety section. Those numbers were really high in the past. So we're really getting our arms around it in regards to the types of inspections and the quality and the timeliness of them. So just moving personnel around, asking for additional positions, which we ask for every year, and sometimes we do get additional positions and they're needed.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of cadres, like temporarily,
Right.
and then until you can actually be staffed sufficiently. You have brush re-inspections. Do you have that data here? I didn't see it. I saw just the brush clearance unit, but I didn't see any. I saw percentages of fail. I saw government parcels.
Right.
Not tons of them. But,
Right. So we can add that to the next one. I know that you're interested. What we did add was the pass fail rates this go round. But so your expectation would be to add when or how far off the re-inspections were done?
Yeah, I mean, like as far as when they pass re-inspections and when they're cleared.
Sure thing. We can add that to the next one on fourth quarter.
Excellent. I think that's those are my questions. Thank you. And thank you for
I'd like to share that I've received some compliments from your department from citizens in LA
Oh, very good.
who are
Thank you.
dealing especially with the brush related issues. And so they're really happy with the people that they've had made contact with. So it's been more than one who's come up and said to me, gee, that was great. I spoke to this person. Of course, they'll tell me names I don't remember. But
Right.
I'll try to actually get them from them sometime. But they are very happy with the services that they receive from your department.
Thank you for sharing that. We know that our inspectors are true professionals and they believe in our mission. So we're fortunate to have the workforce.
Even the people that work in the office, whoever answers the phones, they've been happy with those people. too.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we don't have public comment on that, so.
Do we need to move in file?
Yeah, you need to move.
Okay, so I move in file BFC 17-127.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So 5C is report by the department on the final proposed budget for fiscal year 2018-2019.
Fun part,
Morning, Commissioners. Emilio Rodriguez, Administrative Services Bureau.
Good morning.
We presented the proposed budget back on November 7th and are returning to the board with the final budget document with some of the highlights, including continuing the restoration of engines through the safer grant support, as well as additional ambulance support for high-call areas, expansion of APRUs and FRVs for wider coverage across the city, continuing recruit training with 3 classes for 195 recruits in the Valley Drill Tower, and adding staffing for enhanced youth programs coordination, since there are more high schools involved in the programs. On the regulatory side, there's additional staffing for CUPA inspection and enforcement, and again, that would include legalization of cannabis in January, upcoming January. Other major requests include field equipment and technology upgrades to optimize firefighter and public safety efficiencies in the field and response times. Such would include portable radios. There's a $30 million request for upwards of 3,000 handheld radios as part of a replacement program, since many of those are in their 18th year, end of their life cycle, and will need to be replaced pretty soon. MICLA fleet replacement program for apparatus, including a second water dropping helicopter, firefighter and bailout systems for enhanced safety when firefighters are performing their suppression duties. Continued funding for a fire station alerting system planning and development, the network staffing system, timekeeping, sworn timekeeping system, and dispatch maintenance upgrades. The only changes and requests from that presented in the November 7th meeting was we're actually including position authority for the SAFER grant funding that's requested in the budget. It's resolution authorities to staff the 4 engine companies. Expansion of the APRU and FRV resources across the 4 geographic bureaus. Originally, the request reflected 1 additional team for each program. And the third change was a staffing request for the medical liaison unit to meet workload demands. That would be a fire captain 1 to supplement staff there. The year-over increase from last year's budget of $657 million is about $78 million. The majority of that is attributed to new requests, $58 million, and again, $30 million of that is just radios. and the $20 million is for obligatory increases in ongoing costs, such as the salaries. This budget proposal otherwise reflects only the most critical needs of the department. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
So just to recap what the changes were, because we just saw this last month, right?
Right.
So the only changes is the, so staffing for the Safer Grant expansion, and then 2 was I didn't understand that for the APRUs.
The original report presented to you on November 7th only included 1 team each expansion for the APRU and FRV. The updated report includes basically covering all 4 geographic bureaus, so it's adding 3 additional teams to.
Okay, so we're adding it and that wasn't in the original one that we saw?
No.
Okay. And what's the last one?
Staffing request for the medical liaison unit. That's adding a fire captain 1 to process, do a lot of the workers' comp due diligence and helping bring sworn officers on duty back to the field. They're actually the unit's needs are being met through basically borrowed staff, so we really need a fire captain there to kind of fill in the void.
Okay.
Oh, my question. I had a question. You're right about cannabis. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned, and I know the chief's not here, but that the number of fire inspectors for cannabis inspection doesn't seem to be appropriate. I think it's a little short, because if I first thought we would have 9, and if you're looking at 2,500 sites to be inspected, and won't they all have to be initially inspected? And if so, if it would be like 288 sites per inspector.
I think that's a good question. Everybody's talking about cannabis right now, so we might actually just put that on.
It's in the budget. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know
22.
if Emilio can answer it. Oh, yeah, please.
Kristen Crowley, Deputy Chief of the Fire Prevention Public Safety Bureau. So just specific to the cannabis, we've been part of the dialogue within the city departments for the last 6 months or so. So we did request 8 Inspector 1s, 1 Inspector 2, a Captain 1, as well as clerical and support staff. Mm-hmm. The way that this is supposed to start in January, it's going to be in a tiered approach. So when we asked for those positions, we've actually asked for resolution authorities to start early, which we would most likely get 3 positions. Could be between 200 to 350 original right off the bat, where we would have to do those inspections as of January. So it'd be a tiered approach. And then as the program grows throughout the city, the inspectors, so we would do the enforcement side and the inspection side from the fire code. If after that first year, full fiscal year, if we would have to add additional positions, but we felt comfortable with the original ask for the new budget, at least for the first fiscal year, to be able to accommodate the enforcement and the inspection side.
So originally, from the onset, you don't expect to have 1,500 sites.
Not right at January. No, they're saying it's going to be a tiered approach with a few hundred in the first few months, and because the city can only process so many permits at a certain frequency, so we've been told that there will be between 200 to 350 in the beginning, which we could handle with the 2 to 3 positions, resolution authorities that we would get in January.
And how is Chief Crowley? How is this different than what we already do for other businesses?
Right. So there's real specific fire code requirements that would deem necessary to have a specialized unit who are very well versed and trained in cannabis, from the hazardous materials, the type of fire code inspection that would be required, versus a lot of these normally would be in like a warehouse you would think, or a storefront, where you think that just our normal inspector who would enforce the fire code would be able to handle that. But because there's hazardous waste involved in that, and there's very specific intrinsics, plus on top of that, the added businesses that we would have to do the inspections and the enforcement on, that's why we asked for the increased and a specialized unit that would only do the cannabis side. And so we were very thoughtful in that because we didn't want to put our members in a position where we knew it was coming and it was coming quickly, that we've already started the training on the front end, and it's going to be basically run under our CUPA management, our CUPA section to begin with, because they deal with hazardous materials inventory anyway, but we needed the additional specialized training for those inspectors to make sure we're doing it right.
I was happy to see that it was a line item here,
Right.
because I think it is going to be a whole new department of its own to keep up with what's going to be happening with the growth of this business, and to keep this area safe, not only the business safe, but the neighborhood safe, because that's going to be a real issue with the cannabis usage. And so I'm glad to see that there's also someone the industrial hygienist, who's included in there too, because of the grates and the different kinds of things that will be used in that particular program. Okay, I'm happy to see that that's there. I just wanted to make sure that we had enough staff, because I know that there's going to be. We already have in the city of LA more marijuana shops than anybody has anyplace else in California, I'm so sure. And
Really? Really?
oh yes, in my neighborhood there are like 2 on this block and 1 across the street, up and down whole streets. There are tons of them. And my understanding is they've never been inspected because they're not a part of a law yet. Is that true?
The
What about the
medical marijuana, they are inspected because they'd be like any other business. They wouldn't be exempt from that. But now that this is going to grow at such a large capacity very quickly, that's why I wanted to lean forward and really think and have a strategic thought process of how we'd be able to handle this increase in the workload. But there's a very intrinsic fire code requirements that we want to ensure that from the very beginning that the 200 to 350 that are going to be doing business right from January, that are inspected thoroughly and enforced from the beginning, so that we don't have any issues from the fire code perspective.
Because in South LA we have a large growth of them, and I think they're thinking they will all get blanketed in, grandfathered in, because they're already open. But I'm hoping that won't be true, because they're popping up every day.
Yeah, the city,
on every block.
The city will have very specific regulations, and that's what's in the works as we speak. And all the rules will come out, and everybody will understand, what needs to be followed.
And there's a fee that we'll be recouping.
Yes, yeah. We were meeting on that yesterday, and the fee is moving forward to recuperate the cost.
Okay, good.
And also the training, and is this going to have a negative impact on your bureau as far as staffing wise?
Well, we've absorbed some of that in regards to we're utilizing some of our inspectors right now to be trained specifically for that. So that is taking away some of their workload because we're focusing on cannabis, but we want to make sure that as of January 1, we already have people trained so we can start the inspections right away and the enforcement. And as our new inspectors come in, which will be bringing new people in beginning of January or so, then they're going to fall into those other auxiliary, areas.
How many new promotions do you have coming?
We've got 3 vacancies. We've got we're anticipating 8 to 9 fire inspector 1s, with the trickle down of people retiring, as well as we have 3 new fire inspector 2 positions as of January 1st. So there's a trickle down from there.
So we'll also agendize because obviously the cannabis thing is big right now. So we'll do that later.
Understood.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back to the budget. I think that's it, right? Or any more questions? No. And we have no public comment. So somebody move the item.
Oh, yeah.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have no public comment, so we can move to adjourn. We need another motion to adjourn.
Move the adjournment of the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.